Deliberation will get you or someone killed. The thing that drove me into the Marines was a quest for adventure.
That is, without doubt, mission impossible.
I became manic about achieving things and doing things.
This is insane.
And never missing the thing. In the Marines, I was a sniper, so I was all about accuracy, camouflage. Pulling the trigger as a sniper is like the last thing that you do. It's the sort of polar opposite of kicking doors down and all the glamour of any sniper film you've ever seen. Fear has been constant through my entire career.
And did it ever get overwhelming?
For me, receiving mortar fire and RPG fire, and I was scared. I was incredibly lucky.
This episode is supported by Huel.
Aldo, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start with a line from you, actually. You once wrote, "Don't let fear become the helmsman of your rudderless ship." And that leapt out to me because I would love to have a conversation about how all of us can stop fear taking over our lives.
I think for me, it's about taking charge of it. It's about understanding that one, fear is an emotional response to something, a stimulus, which we all get from lots of different areas, and then working out whether that is rational or irrational. So for me, it's about dealing with facts. When I'm in the moment in a thing, and I feel fear and I'm reacting to it, the first thing that I do is then question it. Is this rational? I'll probably say it out loud. And the precursor to that is me doing a weird clicking noise with my tongue in the roof of my mouth, which I know I'm scared. So I'll be doing something. Let's say it's on a big wall and I'm doing something and there's rocks falling and I'm like, it's just a weird, like it's a tick, literally. And then I'll be like, I'm scared. I talk to myself. And then I deal with the facts. Why am I scared? Is there a reason? Is it based on something that's happened before that isn't in this situation? If that's the case, then I can park that and deal with the current situation. Is it something that is dangerous in this moment that requires me to take action? More often than not, at that point, yes, that's acute rockfall, avalanche, someone holding a gun at your head. I need to take acute action now. If I have all the facts, I can be analytical about it. If not, then I can be intuitive about it, as in I get a feeling and I'll act on that until I have enough information to then change the course of where I'm going. So to basically not be driven by fear is about diving into the reality of it. What are the facts? What are my options? And then getting from all of that to making a decision about the thing. Because indecision in my line of work or deliberation will get you or someone killed. So you have to take all of this information in, process it, deal with it, work out if it's relevant, then make a decision and then go. And actually, if you transfer that into normal life, that deliberation and sort of dilly-dallying and denial phase in any situation, a relationship breakup, a job, taking the job, not taking the job, creates so much disquiet in you personally, inside, in your head, and in almost everything that you do. And so just by making the decision, for me, taking the facts, making the decision straight away, kind of gets rid of the fear because you're then into the known. You've like taken that first step. More often than not, people that I work with are scared about the things they've heard about but not been through. So they're apprehensive or worried. And that's all natural. It's all perfectly normal.
Life as a sniper is sort of shrouded in mystery. I've got no idea what it's about. Neither do you. I think we all know the idea of looking through a sight, pulling a trigger, right? That's about it.
It's the sort of polar opposite of, kicking doors down and sort of you're working in a two-person team and it's very controlled. More often than not, you're out on your own, sort of working under your own sort of set of orders, set of routines, and you're very much, this is what I love about it, autonomous. Autonomy being like one of the key drivers for me to be able to perform. you're essentially autonomous. You have a set of orders and you get given a task and then you go out onto the battlefield. But you are more often than not working in a very, very small team, and you're working in a very, very high consequence environment with, backup is not necessarily coming to help you anytime soon. So you kind of need to be fully self-sufficient in every regard, physically, with your kit, mentally and emotionally. And I think that's what either drew me to it when I was, when I was 12, I wanted to be a sniper in the Marines, and then I became one. So I guess there's a lesson there about what you think about, like, essentially becomes your reality at some point. So it was something that I wanted to do, and it wasn't about becoming a sniper and going off and pulling the trigger. It was about what type of person do you need to become to be able to move through enemy territory and not be seen. And that, that's what we train for. That's the Royal Marines training. Basic training is probably the longest, hardest infantry training in the world. And then to add on top of that, you have probably the hardest sniper course in the world to pass. So it's an incredible, it's an incredibly long process to get there. And for me, it was like, what type of person do you have to become to be that self-reliant, that resilient, robust and confident, but not, I don't mean outwardly confident. I mean to have courage in your own convictions, to be able to do the thing, knowing that, there's only two of you doing it. That just like, I guess if you get like that, passing that course and knowing that that's the level you were at was a very proud moment in my career in the Marines, I guess.
Running late, no time for breakfast, and you're starving. Okay, we've all been there, whether you're racing to meetings, practice, the school pickup, whatever it is. But what if you could get your hands on a nutritious meal ready in just seconds? Well, this podcast is sponsored by Huel, Huel, the world's leading complete nutrition brand. With over 400 million meals sold worldwide, Huel is trusted by people like you and me to fuel our days with convenience, complete nutrition. And right now, you can try this for yourself with 15% off, plus a free gift for new customers by using the code HP at Huel.com. And as well as being nutritious and low in sugar, the reason why I like it is that Huel basically tastes like you're drinking a milkshake, whether it's vanilla or chocolate, it doesn't matter. I think they taste great. So if you're interested in trying it for yourself, get 15% off and a free gift for new customers by using the code HP at Huel.com. Fuel your day with Huel.
And you describe it, Aldo, you say a sniper has to do everything in a slow, controlled, relaxed way, which is the textbook definition of what Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi describes as flow.
Yeah.
Which is that sweet spot that so many people are looking for. So how did you become the person that could access flow?
I guess at the time I was just going through the process of learning, like to learn how to shoot a rifle accurately up to a kilometre away. Requires you to first of all understand all the mechanics and all the bits and bobs of ballistics, internal, external, terminal ballistics. You also need to understand the environment. You need to understand, as in the temperature, what does that do to your round? You need to understand humidity. You need to understand elevation. Like at school, I wasn't going to do trig. Like I just wanted to get out of school and not do trigonometry, and then it becomes like one of the major parts of the job that I'm going to do for the next 10 years. So in the very process though of learning the shooting part, which I have to say as a sniper it's probably 20% of what that job is about, right. But it's at an incredibly elite level of doing the shooting part of it. But when you shoot, you go through a process of breathing, and that breathing is, if you look at rugby players about to take a kick, or you look at people that are trying to calm themselves down, then it's very, very similar. So you go through a breathing protocol, which is essentially getting you relaxed enough that your sight is moving up and down in the exact same spot every single time, and you can close your eyes and open your eyes at the point, and it's the point where you want to be on target. There's obviously a lot more to it, but that breathing puts you in, it alters your state by breathing to get you into that camp position puts you into that state. And oftentimes you need it. Either you're running around or you're scared. And so by default, as a byproduct of getting yourself into having a clear line of sight and a good sight picture, marksmanship principles, you also affect your autonomic nervous system in the process.
So can we talk about how you end up a kilometre or less away from the enemy in a battlefield situation? There's so little that we know about it. Would you mind taking us with you on a mission?
So you're basically stalking. That's the terminology before it got sort of used for something a bit weirder. You're basically utilizing camouflage and concealment, the terrain, map reading, and you're essentially trying to move through the terrain without being seen. The battlefield has changed a lot, I have to say, since I was doing this. In 20 years, even the technology would render most of that stuff unusable if you're looking at the tech that's out there now with drones and thermal. But for me, it would be the same as like deer stalking, for example, is that you're trying to move in close with and kill the enemy, essentially. And you would be the process of stalking. This isn't secret. It's out there. There's Royal Marines documentary on the sniper course, which is fascinating to watch. But essentially, you take risks early. So you're doing a lot of moving at the start, fast speed, covering ground. And then the closer you get, the less distant, the less risks you're taking. Right. As you get closer and you're much more methodical, you're much more...
What counts as closer?
I mean, on the course, you're training to go from 300 meters in that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Because obviously the further out you are, the riskier it is that you're going to drop a shot.
Do you not feel super vulnerable though? Because there's only two of you, you're on your own. As you said, you've got no backup and you're 300 meters away from the enemy in a foreign country.
But that's the job, right? So that is the job. You're incredibly vulnerable and you're not on your own. You have backup of several hundred or thousand men at any one point, but they are probably not going to get to you in the time that you need them. Which is why pulling the trigger as a sniper is like the last thing that you do, because as soon as you've done that, you've given your position away, and then you'll be essentially, even if they can't find you specifically, all of those areas will be bombed. So really, it's about being the eyes and ears. That's why the sniper course, it was a long time ago for me now, but the majority of it is about observation. It's about following the pattern of life, gaining information. It's about focus. It's about building a picture and putting that together. It's about dealing with facts. It's about passing those facts up the chain. It's about it's essentially about gathering information. As soon as all the glamour of any sniper film you've ever seen is they're shooting. As soon as you've done that, you've given the position away. So.
Well, can you explain? I've read a really interesting paper in preparation for you talking to you today, Aldo, from an anthropologist in Israel called Neto Bar, who'd interviewed over 30 snipers, and what she'd spoken about was that snipers were less likely to dehumanize the enemy, and I assume some of that is because you are watching patterns of behaviour, you are getting up close to see the whites of their eyes, but. I'm interested in how you made that mental leap then to go and observe somebody, maybe observing family practices, and then be able to pull that trigger to take a life.
For me personally, it came down to that's what you've trained for. So there was never any moment where you go, I shouldn't be doing this or should be doing this, or looking back on it, yeah, sure, should we have been there? Who knows? There's a big conversation there. But in the moment, you're going through a process, and it's you've trained so hard and for so long that essentially you're going through, you're ticking things off. What's the wind doing? What's the weather doing? You're disassociated. I guess it's probably psychologists could have field day talking to people about snipers, about how they and disassociate and what that means later on down the line. But essentially, I would be going through a series of processes and calculations and checking it off with a number 2, and then you do the job, which is the last 1%.
But then there was another study from the Royal Military College of Canada who said that snipers had the lowest risk of PTSD and also had the highest levels of job satisfaction. So I'm interested in, after a job, how did you process what you'd done and decompress?
I can believe that, in that you train very hard to do it. Obviously, soldiers train very hard all over the world to do these things. But if you're employed solely as a sniper, then you're not going in kicking doors down. You're off at flank. You're sort of removed, in a way, and you're sort of you're looking at this scene from a distance, and everything that you do is calculated. It's not rushed, or certainly in my experience, it's not rushed, and it's not sort of in the heat of the moment, where you're about to make a 50-50 call. You're kind of always, or I was always in a position where you know exactly what you're there to do. You've trained for it. You're in a good sort of I would have been scared, excited, and a load of emotions that I don't even know the words for, and going through, which is why you have the process of going through this, because we know that when you're in, you don't get more clever when the shit hits the fan. It's probably the opposite side of that, and so you have this process. There's like takeoffs that you just go through, and it's a process. So I can imagine that study holds fast, and also you don't just end up becoming a sniper by accident. It's one of the hardest courses to pass, with one of the highest attrition rates of people who go on the course and then fail it. Right. And it's all self-induced. No one's shouting at you. It's all just, you either are going to pass this test on this day or you're not, and that's it. And so to get to that point, you've kind of crossed all of these gates or barriers, and you're very much in a position of being very well trained and ready to go.
Why is the sniper course one of the hardest, if not the hardest, in the world?
I think just generally because of the amount of self-induced pressure and the amount of areas that you cover in a course. Everything from, it's essentially taking all elite soldier fieldcraft and then taking it to another level. So everything from insertion, navigation, camouflage and concealment, escape and evasion, the maths of shooting, ballistics, terminal ballistics. Like, there's just so many facets to it that require you to be operating in the top 1 to 5% of your game for the entire time that you're either on the course or when you're doing the job.
So how old were you when you joined the Royal Marines?
16.
So what role did fear play in your career?
In the Marines, not a huge amount up until probably, the very end when I actually went to war for the first time, because it played in training. It plays a small part in it, because that's the whole point of getting, sort of inoculating yourself against these stressors, is to slowly and incrementally introduce you to more pressure, more stress. The Marines and the military have a thing called adventure training, where they take you and they put you on a climbing wall, or they take you whitewater paddling, or they take you up into the mountains to do mountaineering. And that is to, in a controlled environment, test various different parts about how you operate as a team, how you operate as an individual, to then extrapolate how you operate under fire when it's, the stakes are at the highest. So I think for me, fear has been constant through my entire career, but I think that's what's created the job and the role that I do now. Is it's intriguing. It's intriguing to be in a situation where you're feeling fear, and we automatically assume that, let's say, climbing up a a huge emergent tree in the canopy of the jungle somewhere. I mean, that's scary. Once you get up high, it's scary, but you kind of trust the gear, you trust the kit. And the likelihood of you coming unstuck and dying there is minuscule. But the perception is very high that you could come a cropper there. And yet we don't think twice about jumping in the car. Maybe now it's a bit better. We chuck a seatbelt on and then we smash out 30 miles to work and we get there and we go, I don't even remember how I got here. You know, so there's I think a lot of it, fear for me is about perception and about knowledge. And then the more that I know about a circumstance or a situation, the less fearful I am about it. And it's quite an analytical way of looking at it. Initially, you're scared because the environment is X and you're not used to it. You eventually calibrate into that environment, whatever that is, whether it's dealing with people, narcos, volcanoes, wild animals. You sort of calibrate into it. And then there's a spot after that where it drops off and you become complacent. And that's when you take more risks, accidents, and you have less fear. But ultimately, it's probably the time where you're most likely to come unstuck.
Well, they often say, don't they, like mountain climbers, the most dangerous part of the climb is the descent because you've got there. And so how do you avoid that complacency?
That's a good question. I think for me, time on task is huge. I used to work offshore and on the oil rigs for 3 years. And if you get to 21 days, it certainly was back when I did it, you get to 21 days, you're not allowed to go out in they call it the park, but you're not allowed to go out into the platform to work. You have to stay inside the accommodation because accidents go up exponentially after that 21st day. So the sweet spot was like 14 days. And then you had a few days buffer. And then, you know, ideally you're off the rig at day 21. Right. So expeditions, you know, the one that I did with Alex Honnold 2 years ago, that was 2 months long, and you're in around dangerous situations for that 2 months. But that expedition was like short chunks of like maybe 10 days crossing a glacier. It might have been 10 days on a big wall and then another 2 or 3 days in boats and then another. So even in that expedition, you're chunking it down and having a smaller amount of exposure to that one single risk. So I think probably time scale is one. And then just for me, it's like regularly checking in with facts. You know, just you can easily have a confirmation bias that nothing will happen to you because you've had 30 years of nothing happening to you. But everyone that's been killed in the outdoor industry, you know, in climbing, mountaineering, caving, diving, skydiving, we're all just people like us that were going out, felt good on that day, blah, 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 and then something happened. So it's one of those things that, you know, it's reducing your time on the risky end of the activity.
Before we talk about how you spend your time now, I'd really like to talk about your military career and what you learned from it. You said you didn't really sense fear until you actually went to war. Mm-hmm. Would you take us to one of those moments?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest, the biggest one that I felt the most helpless, which equals to me the most scared, was receiving mortar fire and RPG fire. And that seems fairly, you know, I was a sniper, so I was all about accuracy, camouflage, and, you know, and about being very detailed and specific about what I do. And, you know, my sort of personal opinion was that bombing and RPGs was a bit indiscriminate, and, you know, regardless of how good you were, then, you know, it was just a luck game. The more I know now about me and how I act and react in strange situations like that, is that sense of lack of control is the thing that drives the biggest like fear or precursor to fear. You know, it's the thing that it says to me, like, you're out of control here. You don't, you know, you need to take action. You need to do something now to pull the reins back in. So I would say that being, receiving mortify on RPG fire.
See, what fascinates me about that when you're describing it is because you confess in your book, and you've alluded to it here, that school wasn't for you. And you've said about, like, one of our favourite questions is not asking people how clever they are, but how are they clever? How would you answer that?
How am I clever? I don't think I would ever say that I was clever. I think I've got, I think the way that I am clever would be the way that I've dealt with high stress situations and have it, I feel, reasonably well adjusted afterwards. Whether that's, spending 3 months down in, West Africa during the Ebola outbreak, whether it's being at war, whether it's being with Foxy doing the Narcos stuff. There's quite a lot of things that I could have easily taken that's affected me down the line, but I think that would be probably the only way that I'm clever, is the fact that I've managed to find out a way for me of being able to work and process through doing really hard, difficult things and have it not detrimental to my mental, physical and emotional health.
And did it ever get overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I did when I came back from Iraq in 2003 was pay for my own therapist, because I was like, I don't want to be, this was 20 years ago now. So I was like, some of the things you do in war is not normal, and it's not a normal thing to see or do. And I'd grown up with my mum and dad both being paramedics and talking about, I remember one meal they were talking about who got what parts of the body off the train track when, they worked in the same ambulance. And over dinner, there's 5 of us kids and mum and dad having this conversation. And I think I had this moment when I came back where I thought, I don't want to be dealing with this in 20 years' time. Like so what do you do? So I did a bit of research, found I think it was a cognitive behavior or therapist. Anyway, I went and spoke to this bloke. I booked in probably 12 sessions or 10 sessions. Sat down and talked to him about everything that I'd seen and done there, preempted it. I'd also left the Marines at this time as well. So I had a bit of time. So I thought, well, this is a good time to work on that. No like epiphany, but also looking back, I probably made meaning of all of that immediately after getting back, and was able to, I guess, was able to take the good parts from it, park the bad parts, and not let it affect me too much.
Was there one thing, though, that the therapist said that still stands with you?
Not that I can remember, but the general thoughts that I was having at the end of it was, this was an exciting, not normal, a quite stressful time, and you've witnessed X, Y, and Z, which isn't traditionally normal for a 25-year-old boy to see. Yeah. So whatever you do feel is probably normal. I'm not any superhuman or any different to anyone else. So I think it was probably more the fact of, actually, one thing that I would take away from it is that I do that now anyway after all jobs. It's just not official. I don't go and speak to a therapist or a counsellor, but I come back from a tricky job and I'll go and speak to either someone that was in that, or Foxy, for example, or a mate of my twin, and then just like talk through it all, and that to me seems to work.
One of the interesting things that you've described, Aldo, is you said the best thing I ever did was to join the Marines, and in hindsight, the second best thing I ever did was to leave the Marines. Can you advise us on how you learn to recognise the best time to walk away from a situation?
Because it felt incredibly uncomfortable, because it would have been, the thing that drove me into the Marines was a quest for adventure and a quest to be, to get into the unknown. That's, what I wanted. I needed that. And once I'd been doing it for 8, 9, 10 years, it was kind of like, well, I know this now. I still get the same buzz from it. And when I started thinking about leaving, I started to feel really uncomfortable because it meant that I was back out onto the battlefield on my own with no backup. And that actually excited me. So, it's kind of like, essentially even in the role that I'm doing now in TV and the things that I'm doing, I realized I've been doing it for, say, 12 years. I'm having the same feeling now where I'm like, it's comfortable, it's good, but there's something that's pushing me to then to get me out and to do something that I would be uncomfortable doing at the start. And also, I have a track record now. The last 3 times that I've done it, it's felt incredibly comfortable, but I've grown after that. And the easiest thing to do would have been for me to stay doing the same thing and rinse and repeat.
So how do you silence that voice? Because it is a human instinct to stay where we have certainty, we have autonomy, we have competence, you get lots of plaudits for the nature of what you do. So there must be part of you that says, just stick here for a bit longer. So how do you quieten that part to go, no, I'm going to jump out into the unknown again?
For me, for everyone, I guess it's really easy to get in a rut. We see it everywhere. It's you get in there, it's comfortable. When I do some hard things and some hard jobs or hard physical things, that reminds me of like what it's like to be slightly out of control, being slightly in a position where I need to learn, think fast. And so I just always look back. Actually, now I look back to what I was doing when I was leaving the Marines, and I was scared. That I was more scared leaving the Marines than I was at any point ever in the Marines, and that's because it was, this blanket, even though it's a tough job and it's hard, it's a safety blanket. And then to leave, you are really out on your own. And that excited me. And I think that's what still excites me now, is that unknown, getting that unknown, driving into it, finding out about it, becoming less scared, trying to best understand it and not conquer it, but, use it. And then when that becomes routine, then it's time to go.
I'm going to tell you a secret that I've noticed about high performers. They are laser focused on the power of the gut. You heard me right, the gut. Because the gut and overall health are intrinsically linked. And that's why so many high performers take a probiotic. And one which keeps on being discussed is this, Biotic by Heights. I've been taking it for over a year now, and it is so good. It's one of only 3 products in Europe that's Informed Sports certified. That means it's taken by Olympians, Premier League footballers, Guinness World Record holders, international rugby players. Quite simply, this is gut health for champions. So master your microbiome and treat yourself to a high-performing gut for a high-performance lifestyle with 20% off your first month. Just go to heights.com/HP or enter the code HP20 at checkout to get 20% off and start seeing the difference that Heights could make to your health.
And this plays nicely into something that I know that you talk about, which is designing a life. Not stumbling through life, but really designing a life. Would you explain to our audience what that is and how they can design a life?
So when I got back from Iraq and I went and spoke to this therapist guy, there wasn't like an epiphany of anything, but what I kind of was getting towards the end of was realizing that I was incredibly lucky not to be dead. And that moment early on of realizing just how fragile it is, when you're 25, 26, you're essentially invincible until you're not. Until you see someone else who you think is becoming not alive. Yeah. That at that point, kind of like if I was to look at how I was affected by going to war and I've done next to nothing in comparison to what then unfolded over the next 20 years. But for me, that drive, I remember coming home from there and thinking, I don't want to sleep, not because I'm like dealing with trauma or PTSD. I was like, I have no time left. And it really affected me. I became manic about achieving things and doing things and never missing the thing and always attending. and doing the course and doing this thing and saying yes to this, and which is obviously tiring. But essentially what I then got to the point of very quickly is about, well, if this is all you've got, at 100 years, let's say, max, it's still brief, then what am I going to do with it? And it was at that point, probably about 5 or 6 years after I left the Marines, that I then realized that actually I had thought about something. I had consciously and subconsciously got myself through it, got to the best that I could, and then left. And I was like, I've just achieved a thing that's, I didn't realize, at the time, that essentially what I was doing was like confirming that when you put your mind to something, it sounds cliche, but even more so now in this generation and this world where people need stuff now, instant gratification, likes, follows, like social media as a huge part of it, is that for the people who are willing to spend a little bit of time designing their day, designing their week, and designing the life that they want to have, which is essentially what I have now. I've just spent the best part of 14 months on back-to-back expeditions, doing some world firsts, all pretty amazing stuff that 20 years ago when I left the Marines, I would have been like, that's exactly what I want to be doing. I didn't know at the time, but you kind of go through this process of saying, well, I like that makes me happy, I'm going to do more of that. I like that, I can see where that might go. I'll go down this route, that's useless, that got me in trouble, and I'll get rid of that. But essentially what designing a life is about is exactly that. We spend more time planning a summer holiday or a half-term break than you would do where you want to be in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years time. And I think for me, it was much more because I was face to face with it early on, as lots of people are. We come face to face with our own mortality at all ages and in all different ways. But for me, that then made me go, I need to take action in like making sure that I have the most fulfilling life that I can.
So what questions should people ask themselves to design their own perfect life?
It's ridiculously easy. What makes me happy? What do I want to do? There are so many people that end up and I've done it, where you end up down the line in a job, in a relationship, in a rut where you think, how did I get here? And the reason most of us get there is because we're not asking these questions. We're not saying what really, really makes me happy. And when you start looking at those questions, like for me, it was like I'd been trying to get into doing all of this business stuff around oil and gas and wind turbines and rope access, and none of it was making me happy. And I kind of went back to the drawing board. I read a book, Acres of Diamonds. It was essentially a fable. It was a fable about, not spending time cultivating what you actually already have. And I started looking at what I had, what skills I had. I was good with people, I enjoyed helping and serving people from a leadership point of view. And I loved traveling, I loved adventure. And all of that fell into place when someone asked me to get them and a film crew inside an active volcano, and everything that I'd been doing in my life up to that point clicked. And that was through asking the question right at that time. I was like, what makes me happy? So I had in my head, I was starting to ask these questions. I was starting to piece together. I knew what made me happy. I knew what made me not happy. And as soon as that clicked into place, the rest of it, I was just like, well, gap analysis. It was like, this is where I am. This is where I want to be. This is what I need to do. Tick, 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 tick.
I'm sure there are lots of people, though, listening to this who have a dream life, but the mortgage and the salary and the family and their location, none of it plays to that dream life. What do they do?
It's a good question. I mean, what we have to remember is that we're not trees. So like we can literally do anything. Yeah. We can live one way for 5 years, change it, live another way. I guess it depends on how much pain you're getting from not doing a thing. and how much pain you're getting from or would get from doing the thing. And more often than not, a small amount of temporary pain is enough to stop all of us achieving the things that we want to do. And of course, worrying about what other people say, especially now, you know, social media, it's very easy to be publicly shamed if you get something wrong, whereas before, you know, no one would really know about it. So I guess it depends on, you know, yes, work out what it is that you want to do, ask the questions, what makes me happy, what makes the family happy. But, you know, ultimately real life is, you know, we get ourselves up to the hilt in debt with mortgage, with, you know, all of the rest of the trappings of comfortable, normal life. And the further down that line we go, the harder it becomes to then change direction. Yeah.
You made reference there to abseiling into that volcano in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is that right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that really intrigued me with that is you describe almost this sense of awe. You allow yourself moments to appreciate where you are and what you're seeing. And there's research on this that talks about how powerful that is in terms of giving us perspective, allowing us to ground ourselves in a moment. How can we all get better at allowing ourselves to be awed by where we are, what we're doing?
I do it all the time, and I've done it. The first time I remember doing it was in Iraq in 2003. And I remember sticking my sort of head up and looking at this weird landscape of unexploded ordnance, you know, like bombs in the ground and burnt out buildings. And it was all in a different way. But I remember just looking at it thinking, this is insane. And like taking a moment, like, well, I can tell you what that smells like. I can tell you what that felt like in my hands. I can tell you the little nook that I was looking into at the point, the jacket, the kit, looking at my left boot. Like I can remember every single detail about that thing. And I've actually done it since then a lot. Like I can pinpoint times. I now do it deliberately because I know that how powerful it is to take you back. I remember in 2002, I was leading an expedition, so it was before I'd even been to Iraq. Maybe that was the first time, but I was leading an expedition in, in Guyana, and I had 20 school kids, and I wasn't that old myself, you know, at that point I'm 24 and I'm leading like 16, 17 school kids on an expedition for a month through the jungle. And we came up to this rock on top of Kaichou Falls. It's quite famous, you know, it's a big waterfall. It's, I think, the biggest free flow waterfall, not Angel Falls, but you know, it's big. And I remember getting the kids to sit down there and I was like, close your eyes. Imagine you're in school in 3 weeks' time and you're just about to go into double maths, you're blah, 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 you know, you've had a crap day, you know, and I just like portrayed this really crap situation with them. And then I was like, now open your eyes and look at where you are, because they'd all been a bit knackered and they're teenagers and they all didn't want to be there. And they still now, to this day, those kids, I still get messages saying, thanks for doing that. I can still go all the way back there. So I do it a lot now, you know, and I'm quite...
Where do you go?
Well, as in when I'm doing
you go
it.
back, yeah.
The last one I just did was in Borneo a couple of months ago. We were in this amazing place, and it's just as the sun goes down.
Yeah.
And the call to prayer of the guys that we'd been working with, and the cicadas, and like so like now I make a point of remembering the thing. It's just like a snapshot photo of that moment in time.
And what does it do for you?
When I'm in the moment, it's making me pay attention to it. So I will sit and go, right, I'm going to pay attention to this for like 2 minutes. No phone, no work. I'm just going to sit and listen and watch. Like that's it. It's simple. Like I don't have any sort of protocols or whatever about it. I just sit and pay attention. As a sniper, I've spent many, many, many days, weeks, months lying in a place, just being and looking and listening. And I guess, you know, that's kind of what I do, which kind of grounds you. I mean, there's so much work out there now about people. We're so busy that doctors are prescribing people forest breaks and time in the forest and time outside and grounding. And actually I'm really lucky with my job because I get to do that a lot. You know, I know for a fact my blood pressure and resting pulse rate come down progressively over a trip, like even though I'm doing hard stuff, because I'm outside and I'm getting up when it's light and I'm going to bed when it's dark and I'm not on tech and I'm not on screens. It has I'd say a pretty profound impact on my well-being.
And how has the impact on your well-being had an impact on how you parent?
Being a new parent of 3, so I've got 2 kids, one's 3 and one's 5 months. I'd say it's had the biggest impact on my life for lots of different reasons, as it is, because it's hard, right? It's like, you think you've done some hard stuff and then you have your first kid and you're like, the world's about to end. And my missus does all the hard graft basically when I'm away gallivanting. But what it has actually made me much more aware of is like, there's probably a couple of things. One, how I interact with the world. Like, I now have repercussions. I have a mirror of what I say and do now. And that can be quite frightening as well. I then realize how woefully underprepared I am with vocabulary in that describing something like emotions. I've been trying to read as much as I can about emotions and how to recognize them and how to deal with them and giving names to them, because I now recognize that that's, it's a disability for me that I've had. I have 4 emotions. I'm angry, I'm sad, and whatever. As a new dad, I have the ability now to, what would you call that? Like, sort of change the narrative of what's gone before. We can buy a book of a child psychologist that's, their entire life working, and get it for £7, and you can learn all the right things and the wrong things to do and the things that might make things easier for you. And so I guess in a way it's like that, what would you call that? Like a sort of circuit breaker that allows me to then say, hey, like, I don't have the words for these things either, but I'm going to learn with you.
Can you give us an example then of an emotional label that you've identified recently that you found helpful? Frustrated was one the other day, dealing with the second little one, and I'm like knackered, just getting back, decompressing after a trip, not able to fully engage with the new one because we're not on bottles yet, and just being stressed by it to the point where I'm having to have to regulate my breathing or regulate my state, go for a walk with the dog because I wasn't able to deal with this situation. And it was actually my little lad. He was like, you need to try harder, because we have this thing where I'm like, what do we do when things get hard? And he we would say, try harder. Yeah. And he could see I was frustrated, and he was like, you need to try harder. And I was like, I do. But I would have just been like, I'm pissed off, I'm knackered, right. And I can't do this.
So interesting, because I imagine not going too deep into your emotions was really valuable when you were in the military, right?
Yeah. And it's adaptive, that was adaptive for me as a sniper, to be not emotionless, but to be calculated.
Yeah. But
when I can tell you, when I talk to my missus, using the same strategies that I used as a sniper, it does not go down well. And it's maladaptive to bring up a kid and not have the vocabulary, to deal with potentially what he's feeling and what he's going through. So for me, it's I'm loving the learning journey.
Mm.
I didn't have my first kid till I was 42. I'm 46 now, so I'm kind of I left it a bit later, and I'm loving the learning now. Like, all of the stuff that I'm going through now with him is like, this is amazing. Like the way they see things, the way they understand, the way they're going through like their life.
But I'm a little surprised that, if I'm honest here, you talk about that you didn't feel that emotionally literate, partly because the second act of your career has been all about bringing people with you, taking people into hot spots or dangerous situations, and being sensitive and emotionally intelligent enough to keep them calm and allow them to do their job.
That's probably the biggest part of my job. So when I say that, I was able to, as a sniper in the first 10 years, my kind of life's been like 16 to 26 Marines, 26 to sort of 32-ish was oil rigs and wind turbines, and then the rest of it was TV. And actually, you know, as a sniper, I was probably fairly emotionally literate to maybe like a middle degree or a middle level. But working in TV and you're working with lots of different creative types of people, you kind of have to be a people person. So I probably am slightly more emotionally aware than you know, the rest of my cohort potentially as snipers in that respect. And it's actually what gets you asked back is how you are as a person.
So would you give us some tips then on how to be a valuable team member? Because I think that again is an area that we don't often touch on, about how can we be a great teammate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's loads there. I mean, you can read any amount of leadership books that will tell you these are the models to do X, Y, and Z. But ultimately, to be a good leader or member of a team boils down to very few things, is like character, trust. Like characters, you know, the type of character you are has a massive effect on.
Go on, what do you mean by that?
So your, let's say your mind, your person, how you come across as a person, whether you're negative, positive, your character traits directly impact a situation. So if I look at, like, almost everything I learned in the Marines is gone, apart from the commando spirit, which is like a thing that they don't ever teach you it. It's like, it's 4 words, but it just kind of, you become the epitome of it by going through that process. And it's courage, determination, unselfishness, and cheerfulness in the face of adversity. And if you look at well-performing teams in the line of work that I do, that is like their cornerstones. I know it's the Royal Marines sort of commando spirit there, but if you took them as basics, courage, not running out in front of a hail of bullets, which is obviously part of the job in the Marines, you know, it's moral courage, which is, you know, doing the right thing when it's the hardest thing to do, when you're knackered, especially when no one's watching, right? That moral courage is a key marker of a Royal Marine commando. And that, you know, transfer over into the business world is worth its weight in gold. Drive, determination, like what it is that, you know, intrinsic drive to be a good team member and a good leader. My own opinion is that you need to be intrinsically motivated and driven, not by extrinsic, not by external, not by promotion, not by recognition, not by pay rise, likes, all of this stuff that we now take as granted as means I've done a thing. So that drive, intrinsic drive, motivation or determination, unselfishness, like I don't read many management books or leadership books, but I'm guessing there's not very many of them that have got a whole section on unselfishness or altruism or kindness. But I tell you, when Foxy and I were rowing across the Atlantic, you know, I would come off shift 2 minutes early, and I would go in and I would put his toothpaste on his toothbrush, and I would lay out his bedding, and I would get his stuff ready. And this isn't a cabin, it's the size of like this mat. And I would get all his stuff done with completely without any thought of him doing that back for me. So that unselfishness like goes a long, long way, because if you've got a section of 4, 8, 12 people, you know there's always someone there that's willing to watch your back. And it's just like these things are essentially free. Cheerfulness in the face of adversity. You know, in the Marines, we have quite hard jobs to do, and you know, ultimately, people also die in the process of doing that. It's the highest category of risk and consequence. But still, even in amongst all of that, there's still the ability and the necessity to control your reaction to a situation, and you always have control over how you react to it. And I guess for me, they all form part of what character is, and it's so underrated. You know, someone who has like an unshakable character, you know who they are, and you know you can rely on them, you know you can trust on them. but there aren't many courses that can teach you character and train it potentially. So I think that would be it, and trust and integrity and all these other things that are actually intrinsic in, to me and the Marines. But, as soon as you leave that world and you get into the big bad world out there, you realize that, that's not common.
And something else that's vital in the work that you do now is your physical abilities. And we've spoken so much over the last hour about mental dexterity, and sometimes kind of slightly ethereal areas of life. Whereas let's talk really clearly about the power of making sure you're in physically good shape. And I think a lot of people would benefit from knowing what your daily routines look like, from the time you wake up to the food you eat, to the exercises that you do, the supplements that you take, the things that you do to keep yourself in this great place.
So I'm 46 now. I would say I'm in good shape mentally, physically and emotionally. I feel strong and robust. I don't feel fragile in any way, apart from if I've not had sleep after dealing with a night of 2 kids that are up. But I there's no magic, and I'm not an expert in this, but for me, I have sleep, exercise and nutrition are 3 non-negotiables that without, on expedition, then I can let 1 or 2 slip. But in the process of letting those slip, I know and understand that my performance is massively reduced, potentially dangerous, potentially making bad decisions, either that could cause injury or potentially even moral decisions that that I might regret further down the line. That when you're on expedition, you can deal with that, and you can sort of work out what's worth doing that and what isn't worth doing. When I'm at home, I try and prioritize my sleep. My chronotype is a lark. I'm up 5, 6, something like that in the morning. That's always been the case for me. If I need to get more sleep, I have to go to bed earlier. So I'm probably in bed by 9, half 9. Yeah. I'm definitely not getting as much as I should be or could be. It's interrupted, it's broken, new kid. Exercise is non-negotiable. It's when I'm at home. In fact, I did this when we moved to the new house. I prioritized converting the garage into a gym because I thought we've got a kid on the way. I was trying to lubricate as much as I could to reduce the amount of, you speak to so many people that go, I've had kids and I stopped training, and you're well, so I kind of had that insight, and I was I need to make this as easy as possible. So I put in a gym in the garage, which is a luxury, to have a garage in the first place.
And what does training look like?
Training for me is strength. I'm probably in a bit of a plateau. I haven't done much in the last 5 months because I've been back and forward on different jobs, but it's strength. So I'm very much about an interesting point about that as well. Since I moved into the garage, I'll be doing 5x5s is probably a good one. So I'll do on a Monday, I might do strict shoulder press, 5 sets of 5 as heavy as I can go, plus also squats, 5 sets of 5s, as heavy as I can go. That would be the 2 main lifts. Yeah. And then in between that, I'm doing all the old school stuff, pull-ups, burpees, press-ups. I'm not mega religious on what I do, but what I try and do is full body on most of the days that I train, apart from if I'm doing cleans, for example, because that's my entire body gets wrecked there. I've always trained 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and have the weekend off. I run probably twice a week when I'm back, 6 miles, something like that. Is I don't see the need to go any further than that. And I've got a stationary bike that I'll do 3 or 4 sessions on, steady state, so it'll probably keep my heart rate at 125, 130, something like that. But I'm not a ninja in any of this, and if my sleep isn't great the night before, then I sack it off. I'm not a nut about any of it. What I need to be is resilient when I go to work. I need to not be at the peak physical fitness or mental, fitness where I go on a job and then I'm instantly fragile. You know, I need to be able to fall over with a Bergen on, with a rucksack on, and then still get up and still, you know, tweak my back or tweak my knee. I still need to be able to do the job. So a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is just basically keeping my core solid. So like my day is up, phase gets done between probably 5:30 and 7, take Atlas to nursery on the bike, come back, and then I'm into when I'm writing. So I wrote Lessons from the Edge in lockdown.
A brilliant book, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. And we're into sort of in the second one now, so I'm starting to put the ideas for that together. So that'll be like, I'll do a block of work in the morning of like 2 or 3 hours that's, you know, that's uninterrupted. So phone off, everything off, just like do the thing. And then the rest of the day, I'll be like, on Monday, I went out downhill mountain biking, you know, just because it's been bumpy re-entry coming back from this last trip. So I just needed like a reset of going out, doing something hard, and like where I wasn't thinking about anything. And if you do downhill mountain biking, like you take your eye off the front wheel for a second, then you're going to be hurting. So I spent Monday doing that. And actually it gave me clarity to think through this podcast, another one I'm doing next week, and 2 talks that I'm doing. And that was without sitting down behind a laptop. I also put a sauna in at home. So I've started doing that. It's tiny. It's literally like the size of this chair. So I've started doing a bit of that. But essentially, I try and spend as much time as I can outside. And especially when the boys or Atlas is off nursery, then we're out.
Yeah. Putting an adventurous spirit into your youngest and your oldest.
I'm trying to, and you know, the more you read about what's sort of going on with young people and anxiety and depression, it's linked directly to smartphones, social media, all the rest of it, all the stuff that I still need to use. You know, that's being affected a little bit. What I was going to say about putting the gym in the garage, what I have noticed is I have lost a big chunk of like where I got my community from. CrossFit, I was in a CrossFit gym, you know, COVID happened, and then like I put the gym in. I haven't trained with other people in like 3 years. So I do miss that sort of, you know, other people outside of work, you know, that it's just like, it's about gym, it's about fitness. So I need to redress that, I think.
Ready for a few quick fire questions?
Yes.
The 3 non-negotiable behaviours that really matter to you.
Sleep, exercise, nutrition. That's one. I mean, that's an easy one right there. The second one for me is taking action. It's like a bugbear of mine when people say, I was going to do this. And you're like, yeah, but you didn't. Like, why didn't you do it? Like for me, take action. The best time to take action is when you have the idea, when you're still like G'd up and you can't sleep and you're wired from that. So take action. And the third non-negotiable behavior really is about focus. And it's something I'm like working hard on, is like ditching that need to pick up my phone and have a look at it and check in on all these bits. I've just recently got rid of all social media off my phone. So I have to, you know, and I, you know, same as lots of us where we need it to promote ourselves and do the thing. But, you know, I've just taken it off my phone to stop that focus interruption. So sleep, exercise, nutrition, taking action, and focus, doing work, proper work.
Great.
What advice would you give a teenage Aldo just starting out?
Teenage Aldo, I would say, don't worry about what other people are thinking about or what you think about. People are so interested in their own lives, they don't actually give a bleep about you. So basically get on with it, but be careful what you are thinking about, because it does become your reality, whether you're thinking about it consciously or subconsciously.
What's your biggest strength and your greatest weakness?
My biggest strength is my ability to be not resilient, but like anti-fragile. If you read Nassim Taleb's book there, you know that.
What's the difference?
Resilience would be, you know, coming out the other side of something the same, not broken. anti-fragile or post-traumatic growth would be coming out the other side of it and growing from it. And if I look back at every single thing that I've done, that's been, my trajectory has been growth, not anything else. So that would be, I think, my biggest strength, is to be able to find a way out of it that suits me, make meaning from it that suits me. My biggest weakness, would probably be, it's hard because I've got loads. My ability to stay on task, focused. Like, my attention is quite easily fragmented with all of the stuff that's going on, especially now in this world of, like, I'm doing TV and you get pulled from pillar to post, and it's quite easy to get distracted by the blinking lights of all sorts.
What's the single best piece of advice you've ever received, and why?
The single best piece of advice. That's so hard. I would say it's probably along the lines of taking action. It's about going after it. When I passed out of the Marines, I went almost straight on recce selection, and everyone was like, who is this guy doing this thing? And I just thought, well, if I do it now, I get the feedback immediately at where I fail, and then I can redress that, and then I can do it again and pass. And I guess that advice about just doing the thing came from, it was actually a scout leader. And he was just like, you've got to be clear about what you want to do and just do it, and don't worry about other people.
And finally, for the people that have listened to this conversation, what would you like to leave ringing in their ears? Your one golden rule for a high performance life?
I would say that, a high performance life can be distracting, and for people that want to achieve greatness, the minute that there isn't greatness, then it can be a spiral into a pit of despair about lots of different things. But to borrow a phrase from Professor Andy McCann, who's basically would say that performance is about resilient performance. It's about turning up on that day with what you've got. And like, that resonates with me so much. It's like your performance on that day with the kit you had, the sleep you had, the information that you had at the time, that performance there is the best that you could have done on that day.
It's a great way to end. Thank you so much, Aldo.
Thank you very much.
Privilege, thank you.
Thank you.
Today's show is sponsored by Vanta, the all-in-one trust management program. Now, here at High Performance, we've tried really hard to create a safe, trusting environment for our guests. And that's why we've teamed up with Vanta, because whether you're just starting or maybe scaling your company's security program, actually having top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. And Vanta automates compliance for ISO 27001, SOC 2, GDPR, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build customer trust. As well as that, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all of it powered by Vanta AI. Over 8,000 global companies like Flow Health and Cora, they use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. Click the link below or scan the QR code on screen to get $1,000 off Vanta. That's $1,000 off Vanta by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code.